The National Desk, America's News, now.
Wicked weather nearly everywhere, from a dangerous heat dome covering most of America to the first named storm of the season, where it's happening and when relief could come.
I'm here to answer questions. I'm here in the spirit of transparency, and I'm here to take responsibility.
Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun appeared before Congress, but it is the message to the victims' families that he hopes resonates with the country. What he had to say before questioning began. And court dates versus concert dates, the controversy following Justin Timberlake's overnight arrest in the Hamptons. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, we are tracking a heat wave that maintains its grip over the eastern half of the United States. Right now, nearly 77 million people under heat warnings. More than 150 million Americans will be in 90-degree heat or higher throughout the week. And more than 200 cities from the Midwest to the Northeast could break high temperature records before the heat wave passes. Meanwhile, South Texas and northeastern Mexico are under a tropical storm warning. The National Hurricane Center says the cyclone is not quite a tropical storm yet because it lacks the formation associated with a proper named storm, but it could become one by tomorrow. And if it does, it will be named Alberto. Sustained winds have already hit 40 miles per hour, making it tropical storm strength, and it will bring a downpour of rain to southern Texas over the next 3 days. As the storm approaches, the National Weather Service is warning of a peak storm surge of 1 to 3 feet from the Rio Grande on the Texas-Mexico border to the westernmost part of Louisiana, and in Galveston Bay area, the surge could be 2 to 4 feet above sea level, bringing destructive waves. Live look now over Dedham, Massachusetts, where emergency 911 systems have come back online across the state following widespread outages this afternoon. At around 2:30 this afternoon, public safety officials said they were aware of the disruptions and began investigating the cause. The systems were down for about 2 hours. No reasons have been given for the interruption. Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun came before Congress today to testify, but first addressed the family members of people who died in Boeing 737 MAX crashes.
I would like to apologize on behalf of all of our Boeing associates spread throughout the world, past and present, for your losses.
Calhoun also apologized to the passengers and crew who were on the Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX flight that had its door plug blown out in mid-air in January. He says Boeing is committed to improving its safety culture. Calhoun announced in March that he's stepping down by the end of the year. Meanwhile, outside of the hearing, family members of those killed in the 2018 and 2019 Boeing 737 MAX airplane crashes are protesting, saying their loved ones died because of Boeing's poor leadership.
Boeing has not improved its safety. Even since 5 years ago, even 6 and 7 years ago, they knew about a lot of problems with manufacturing and they didn't improve it.
I want them to be held accountable for murdering 346 lives.
A Boeing 737 MAX 8 operated by Indonesia's Lion Air plunged into the sea in October of 2018. And the same type of plane operated by Ethiopian Airlines crashed into a field in March of 2019. 346 people were killed across both crashes. Boeing settled with the Justice Department for $2.5 billion, admitting employees misled regulators about the safety of the 737 MAX. Meanwhile, renewed calls for accountability in getting to the bottom of COVID-19, how it started and what to do next. We're at the center of a contentious hearing on Capitol Hill. National correspondent Christine Frizzau was there and has more.
In terms of the cover-up, my guess is the smoking gun exists somewhere under these heavy redactions.
Accusations of a cover-up of the origins of COVID-19 remain a rallying cry for Republicans who argue the National Institutes of Health, led by Dr. Anthony Fauci, tried to suppress theories that the virus started in a lab, namely the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where U.S. and Chinese scientists were working jointly on gain-of-function research.
HHS and NIH have not produced documents related to the gain-of-function research that the chairman and I requested nearly a year ago.
A panel of scientists presenting differing perspectives.
Based on the current available evidence, I believe that the most plausible origin of SARS-CoV-2 is spillover from a bat to an intermediate animal and then to a human.
Multiple lines of secure evidence point to a research origin. By contrast, zero secure evidence points toward a natural origin.
The global pandemic sparking worldwide fears and uncertainty about how to respond, also fueling misinformation as people were watching friends and family get sick, become hospitalized, and in the case of more than 1 million Americans, die from the virus. One reason why Senator Gary Peters calls it a matter of homeland security.
We must learn from the challenges faced during this pandemic to ensure we can better protect Americans from future potential biological incident.
Lawmakers in both parties blaming China for the lack of answers more than 4 years later.
As a U.S. Senator, does it make you a little concerned given how resistant they have been to being upfront and honest and transparent about the origins of COVID?
More than concerned about the Chinese Communist resistance to truth about public health catastrophes. It is deeply alarming and chilling.
Attempts to get answers from China still falling short.
The origins of COVID, as well as the U.S. response, were major issues in the presidential election 4 years ago, and they are reemerging just in time for the next one. Amira?
And Christine, what are the senators saying about what should come next?
Well, some are calling for subpoenas of some of those documents they've been waiting a long time to get their hands on. Others say it's time for a 9/11-style commission to investigate all things COVID, something nonpartisan, where members of this commission would follow the facts away from the bubble and the bright lights of Washington.
All right. Thank you very much. Christine Frizzell reporting in Washington, D.C. Senate Republicans have blocked a Democratic attempt to restore a Trump-era ban on bump stocks following last week's Supreme Court ruling striking it down. Democrats asked for unanimous consent to pass the bill today. Bump stocks allow semi-automatic weapons to fire a whole lot faster, but Republicans said the bill would restrict other firearm accessories, even ones that make guns safer. President Biden said he'd sign a bump stock ban into law if one got to his desk. And Anderson Aldrich pleaded guilty again for the Colorado Springs shooting at Club Q in 2022 that killed 5 and injured 46 others. This time it was for federal charges. Anderson pleaded guilty on the state level last year and is serving a life sentence. Federal prosecutors are not pursuing the death penalty in exchange for the guilty plea. The FDA has notified Dollar Tree that it failed to pull tainted applesauce pouches from its store shelves, possibly containing lead contamination, for weeks after an October recall. More than 500 children across 44 states got sick from lead poisoning last year. Dollar Tree officials said today they are operating under new management and are working to update policies to quickly and effectively execute product recalls. Dollar Tree has more than 16,000 stores in 48 states. The demolition of the Temple Court Apartments in Miami began today. The building sustained irreparable damage last week when a fire was intentionally lit on the 3rd floor there. City officials did not allow evacuated residents to return to get their belongings because it was considered structurally unsafe. 73-year-old Juan Figueroa was arrested for arson as well as attempted murder. The victim, who was shot, Feder Biat, he remains intubated in the hospital. His prognosis at this moment unclear. And tonight, as the war in Gaza rages on, a multi-billion-dollar sale of weapons to Israel all but a done deal. This after senior Democrats, initially holding out their support, gave in to the pressure from the Biden administration, green-lighting what is expected to be the largest weapons package in the history for the country. That weapons package amounting to about $18 billion, specifically for F-15 fighter jets to Israel. But it comes as President Joe Biden puts increasing pressure on Israeli officials to end the war in Gaza. And last month, he even suspended a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs to the country over concerns on how they would be used in Gaza's Rafah, possibly endangering large swaths of civilians that had been taking shelter there to evade hostilities. Earlier today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken confirmed the administration was still debating the transfer.
That remains under review, but everything else is moving as it normally would move. And again, with the perspective of making sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against this multiplicity of challenges.
Since October 7th, the U.S. has enacted legislation providing at least $12.5 billion in military aid to Israel, which includes $3.8 billion in March and an additional $8.7 billion in April. Meantime, a lack of aid flowing into Gaza for Palestinians on the ground continues to be a major point of contention between the Biden administration and Israel, as does differing views on how and when to end the war that has inflicted a high casualty toll. Tonight, a growing number of Democratic lawmakers say they plan to skip Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to Congress next month.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has created a humanitarian catastrophe. He has also made clear that he does not support U.S. policy for a two-state solution.
Netanyahu is scheduled to address Congress on July 24th. And coming up, where tornadoes and hail are possible tonight, plus the challenges firefighters are facing in California and New Mexico. Then lawmakers plan to put a stop to a vulgar use of artificial intelligence that sexually exploits teens. And later, 5 sisters are facing decades in prison for an elaborate mail fraud scheme. How they managed to get more than $1 million over just a couple of years. Stay with us. Right now, 45 million people are at risk for severe thunderstorms, especially in the central U.S. from northern Texas to Minnesota. Large hail and damaging winds are the main threats there, but a few tornadoes are also possible. This risk will drop tomorrow, with storms still possible but less likely. And parts of New Mexico are now under a state of emergency as crews continue to battle several big fires. At least 500 buildings have been damaged. The South Fork fire in Ruidoso covers nearly 14,000 acres and prompted evacuation orders for 7,000 people. The fire there 0% contained. Meantime, in Southern California, the Post fire is now 24% contained, up from yesterday, but it is still burning more than 15,000 acres. It's destroyed at least one building so far. A California Highway Patrol officer says it's one of the worst fires he's ever seen, and he doesn't want cars or trucks to be the reason for more.
If you're pulling a trailer, make sure those chains are not dragging. Make sure you've got an emergency kit because there still could be some closures off and on.
A 10,000-acre fire in Colusa County has doubled in size overnight after starting yesterday in northern California. And a 5,400-acre fire in Calaveras County that also started yesterday sent a firefighter to the hospital and destroyed several buildings. That's now 20% contained. And tonight, Justin Timberlake's mugshot. It is making the rounds after the singer spent the night in jail, charged with driving under the influence in the New York Hamptons. According to Sag Harbor Village Police, the singer blew past a stop sign a little more than a half a mile away from the hotel where he left a gathering with friends. Police say he swerved into a lane of oncoming traffic and, upon being pulled over, performed poorly on sobriety tests. The entertainer was arraigned and released without bail, but it's unclear how the incident now impacts his future concerts. With his tour currently underway, he's due back in court on July 26th, the same day he's scheduled to perform in Europe. On Capitol Hill, an ethics investigation into conduct by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz needs more review. That comes from the bipartisan House Ethics Committee today as they look into claims that Gaetz took part in sexual misconduct, illicit drugs, and other actions, including accepting improper gifts. The committee says it has finished looking into allegations that Gaetz converted his campaign funds into personal use and that he shared illicit images to colleagues on the House floor. Gaetz has denied any wrongdoing, and he's calling the new investigations against him, quote, frivolous. There's a new effort in Congress to put a stop to the publication of non-consensual sexually explicit images, often made with artificial intelligence. It's an issue that's affected both public figures and high school students. National correspondent Atrel Nashar has more.
More and more deepfakes, AI images or videos misrepresenting someone, are being used to exploit, shame, and blackmail teenagers.
My name is Elliston.
Like Elliston Berry, who was just 14 last fall when she learned nude photos portraying her and her friends were on social media.
I always will have a fear of this happening again or resurfacing just because it's so easily happened to anybody, which is what happened to me.
A boy at her school took innocent photos from their social media pages and ran them through an app to create deepfake pornography. It took Snapchat more than 8 months to take the images down.
Although the images are off Snapchat, that doesn't mean that people might not have them on their phone.
Barry and her mom were on Capitol Hill on Tuesday as a bipartisan group of senators unveiled a bill called the Take It Down Act that would require social media platforms and websites to create a system for removing this kind of content within 48 hours of receiving a victim's complaint.
The technology right now is far too easy for people to use.
Between 2019 and 2023, the number of deepfake videos online skyrocketed by 550%, according to the online safety group Home Security Heroes. And 98% of deepfake videos online are pornographic. The Tech Industry Coalition Chamber of Progress says they're encouraged to see Congress tackling the issue, but that tools for flagging this content already exist, adding more funding for law enforcement to prosecute predators is an important part of the solution, and the Take It Down Act doesn't fix that. With AI involved, it could get more complicated. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise recently said House Republicans are not interested in new AI regulations.
Are you worried that that might get in the way of progress on this?
You know, I'm not. I think that's a very different thing when it comes to regulating AI generally. And I think we are going to see widespread bipartisan agreement. This bill that we introduced today, I've got 12 co-sponsors, 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans.
Until something changes, the issue is adding anxiety to an already difficult time to be a teenager. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
We are tracking a potential impact on avocado and mango sales in the United States. U.S. inspections of 2 of the top sellers from Mexico remain halted at this time due to some security concerns for plant health service inspectors. The fruits inspected before the pause are allowed to come into the country, but avocado supplies in the U.S. could be impacted if the pause drags on. A similar suspension happened in February of 2022, but it was short-lived and had a limited impact on imports. In your health alert, it's not just heat exhaustion or heat stroke that you need to keep in mind when it is hot outside. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares other hidden heat dangers that can impact your health.
Hey there, everybody. We all know when it comes to the sun and the heat, we need to protect against it. And that means knowing what can influence your health in some of these hotter temperatures.
For example, we're all prone to sunburn in the heat, but Dr. Andrew Straw, an associate professor of pharmacy practice at Ohio's Cedarville University, told me people on certain medications can burn more quickly than those not on the drugs.
Some of these would be antibiotics as a big one. And this is true. There are some antibiotics that can make sunburn worse. And so it's really important to be aware of that. So you can take preventative measures until that antibiotic is completed, even a few days after it's completed, to make sure it doesn't cause a severe sunburn.
In addition to sunburn, certain health conditions are aggravated by heat.
The heat can aggravate, especially some of our patients that I see with some breathing disorders like asthma or COPD. It can be in the humidity, especially.
Tick bites are also a problem in the heat. We're outdoors, but we don't want to wear long sleeves and pants for protection against these critters. Symptoms mimic heat-related problems, so you might not even know you have a bite until you get headaches, nausea, muscle and joint pain, as well as a distinct rash.
What should you do if you're worried about some of these symptoms?
It's great to be able to, especially now with electronic health records, sometimes you can send your doctor a picture of what that bite looks like, and that can be really helpful to them to actually see what's going on and recommend something right away.
Finally, he says dehydration impacts all of us, but certain people take blood pressure medications that actually push water out of the body, adding danger.
Now, your own pharmacist can answer any specific questions that you may have about some of your own medications and these reminders with your health news. I'm Liz Bonas reporting.
Thank you, Liz. And coming up, a new law in New York restricts social media for kids and for teens. Why some people believe the regulation is misguided after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Pennsylvania, where a disabled vehicle.
A total of 30 birds, ranging between ducks, chickens, roosters, and turkeys, were living inside the school bus. Officials say they were being fed to 4 dogs who were outside the vehicles, 3 German shepherds, and 1 Australian shepherd. A bull and a pony were also found in a trailer. It's alleged that those animals were used for bestiality purposes in other states. Police say if those allegations are true, investigating will be challenging.
This type of case is very challenging for law enforcement because it deals with several jurisdictions and interstate. So we have to get together with the SPCA to investigate whether or not a crime was actually even committed.
A bill passing the New York State Senate and Assembly earlier this month looking to protect the mental health of children from addictive social media feeds. The bill blames algorithms that tailor feeds to a person's interests for having devastating effects on children and teenagers. something Adam Kovacevic doesn't believe.
I think, unfortunately, some people got it in lawmakers' heads that algorithms were the problem, when I believe algorithms are actually make social media healthier for teenagers.
According to Kovacevic, teenagers do want social media to tailor to their interests. A study by Common Sense Media found that teenagers they surveyed want to deprioritize spammy content, but some in Rochester are uncomfortable with targeted content.
5 sisters indicted for mail fraud and conspiracy to commit mail fraud. Federal prosecutors say they made more than $1 million in fraudulent returns. Our cameras captured some of the defendants and their family leaving federal court after pleading not guilty to all charges. Investigators say the sisters would buy items online, request a return shipping label, then pretend to return it using a self-service kiosk at the post office,
where they would scan it at a self-service kiosk to return the items. They never returned anything in the mail.
Getting a refund for the items they supposedly mailed back, then turning around and returning the items for a second refund at the actual store, even flying to multiple states across the country to make the returns and avoid detection.
Coming up, the Florida Panthers have another chance to win their first hockey championship tonight, who they'll have to beat to get to the Stanley Cup. Boston clinched its NBA championship title last night, and now the Florida Panthers have a chance to do the same tonight when they face off against the Edmonton Oilers in Game 5 of the hockey finals. Florida won the first 3 games to take a commanding lead, and tonight there will be a second chance to grab the title. Winning their first Stanley Cup at home is a possibility, and that first puck drops at 8 p.m. Eastern. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Have a wonderful night.